All right, 1 second here. All right, welcome everyone to this Q&A. Again, I want to welcome everyone. To this Q&A. I'm going to start off with something. I don't know if it's a little bit controversial. Maybe I should do it controversial issues. But anyway, we're going to speak. I guess I'm going to speak. Wasn't really a question, but it's something that's has been out in the news. Over the last 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever it is, and whatever. It's a broader topic, much broader topic, which we've spoken about, but again, these things come up, so always good to speak about again. And that is about anti-Semitism. So anti-Semitism comes up, there sometimes people will say, well, not enough anti-Semitism in the world. If there would be, heard someone say many years ago, we need more anti-Semitism in order that there should be more unity among the Jewish people. Now, there's plenty of anti-Semitism in the world. I think it's probably the highest it's been in a very long time. With all kinds of anti-Semitic, acts and different things. So people have to know now, whatever, I'll go in the broader context in a second or what recently happened. But people have to know, the Torah tells me that Esav hates Yaakov. Now, why does Esav hate Yaakov? Now, you can tell me, well, didn't Yaakov steal the blessing? Right? Didn't Jacob steal the blessing? Right? Underhanded, so to speak, poor Esav starving, after rummaging, pillaging, murdering, doing all these immoral acts. So Esav comes in today, give me some of that red stuff. And Yaakov says, okay. Well, Esav says, I'm starving, give me some of that red stuff. So Yaakov says, okay, sell me your blessing. He's like, what? I'm starving. I'm going to die. Go sell it. Sell me the blessing. Give me the blessing. The firstbornship. So he says, fine. I'll sell it to you. He feeds him. Shovels it in like a pig. Eats. And he despises his birthright. Then we know the whole story that Yaakov dresses up as Esav in order to get the blessing. Right, and when Esav comes in and he says, my brother tricked me twice, then Yitzhak understands that he gave the right person the blessing, etc. So that's the beginning. That's the beginning where it all starts. Now we have to understand. That if you look at it in that context, so what are we going to say? He said, look what Yaakov did. Yaakov deserved what he got. Future Jewish people deserve what they get. Well, let's call a spade a spade. Let's understand. Anti-Semitism, not something that's rational. People claim, Jews are in power, get all this money power, whatever. But there's also anti-Semitism in places where Jews don't have any money. So everything that anti-Semites say could be not true in another context. In other words, there are contradictions all the way through. So what does that mean? In general, it means it's not rational. Totally not rational. There's a story, Rabbi Yerucham Levovitz, of blessed memory, the spiritual guide of the Mir Yeshiva. So Rabbi Yerucham tells a story, his commentary on Chumash, when he speaks about Yaakov and Esav, and he says that some non-Jewish kids were playing They throw a ball, goes over one of the kids' heads. So he bends down to pick it up to give them the ball. So he gives them the ball back, gives one of these kids the ball back. Was he a young child? Right, a young child. I think 5 years old, 6 years old. Doesn't say, but whatever. From the context, he's talking about a young child. So what happens? So the child gives him the ball. So the child takes the ball and he smacks Rabbi Yerucham. Smacks him in the face. So Rabbi Yerucham asks the question. He asks the following question. He says, how can it be? Where did this kid, he didn't do anything wrong. They look at him in a funny way. Where did this kid learn to hit a Jew in the face? Where did he learn it from? So Rabbi Yerucham said, you know where he learned it from? It's in the air. Right? There's a statement. There's a statement, as we said. There's a statement. What's that statement? Esav ate Yaakov. That's the statement. And that's eternal. That's eternal until the Messiah comes. It's never going to end. Sometimes it'll be better. Sometimes it'll be worse. Right? But what is Rabbi Yerucham pointing out? And others say the same thing. Say the exact same thing. It's not rational. Totally not rational. And anti-Semitism existed for a very long time. Very, very long time. You know, one thing we have to understand as well, Talmud says all Jews are intertwined. Kol Yisrael Ravim Zeh. So if a Jew does something wrong, secular Jew, religious Jew, even if someone else could have gotten away with it, we're put on a pedestal because we are the chosen nation. But if we do something wrong, all Jews get blamed. Never happens in any other context. Right? If an Italian did something, in Brooklyn, did something wrong, they're really going to say, burn down Italy? No. No more cannolis. No. Never happened. Why? Non-Jews don't have that same context. They're not all intertwined. But if a Jew does something wrong, no matter how small it is, and for anyone else, it wouldn't really matter. They say, oh, look what they're doing to the Arabs. Look what they're doing over here. Look what they're doing over there. And the Jews own Hollywood. My cashier. What's the connection? Even if it would be true, what's the connection? Because we're all intertwined, right? Secular Jews during the Holocaust couldn't understand why Hitler, Yamach Shemoy V'Zichroi, may his name be blotted out, may rot wherever he is, right? He himself didn't care if he had Jewish blood on the wrong side, right? If a person's mother's Jewish, then they're Jewish, right? It doesn't matter if the father's Jewish, if they have Jewish blood, generations down, doesn't matter. He said, we're going to kill every single Jew, right? But the secular Jew says, what do you want from me? I'm like you. I fought in your wars, right? I did, we married your women, went to your universities, went to your schools. What's the big deal? What do you want from me? They're different, meaning us, Orthodox Jews. They don't keep your laws, right? They don't eat your foods. They have different holidays. If you touch their wine, they won't drink it. Kaufman's language, spiritual cooties, right? Just exactly what Haman said, right? Haman, today's the first day Rosh Chodesh, right? First new month of Adar, first Adar, 2 Adars this year because it's a leap year, right? So we have an extra month before Passover. So Haman in the book of Esther tells Achashverosh, this one Jew won't bow down to him. So he says, not only am I going to kill him, I'm going to kill all his people. And he says, the people, they're spread out, they don't keep your laws, they don't eat your food, they don't this. So Achashverosh says, here, do what you want. You don't even have to pay me, do what you want. Same claims. Self-hating Jews, they make the same claims as anti-Semites. Exact same claims. They're no different. They'll say if we would dress the same as everybody else, if we'd eat the same as everybody else, anti-Semitism will go way down. Not true. We see that. We see that the more we try and be like non-Jews, what's going to happen? They're going to hate us more. That's what they're going to do. So we have to be squeaky clean. We can't give anybody, a soapbox to say anything against us. And it's a hard thing, because you're right. We are the chosen people. We're held on a higher pedestal. True. So we got to be very careful what we do, how we act in public. It's a responsibility, huge responsibility. But see, I'll tell you a story, and I'll get to really what I want to speak about. And that is, and somebody told me many years ago, a Jew doesn't know anything about Judaism. You're going to see. Doesn't know anything about Judaism. What do you say? What does this person say? This person says that the reason there's so many problems with the Arabs in Israel is because Jews. It's because of the Jews. Because of the Jews in Israel. So I said, well, do you agree that the English deserve to live in England? Yes. Albanians in Albania? Yes. Italians in Italy? They say yes. Jews in Israel? No. I said, okay, let's go back. Let's try this again. They're claiming that the reason there's so many problems because, we stole their land and whatever. So I said, okay, let's try it again. The English, they deserve to have their own country? Yes. The Albanians? Yes. Said the Germans? Yes. Italy? Yes. Jews? No. Now, forget about the Bible, forget about the Torah, forget about anything else. I said, doesn't every nation deserve, every group of people deserve to have their own place? So in theory, they agree. So I said, okay, let me ask you the $1 million question. I'm going to show you just how foolish this person is, right? And how they don't know anything about history or Judaism or anything else. So what was my question? I said, okay, so where should the Jews have gone? See, Herzl, his idea was, if we can't get the land of Israel, so we'll take Uganda. Right? We'll take Argentina. But he got lucky. We got the land of Israel. Fine. So I said, so where should the Jews have gone? So this person told me, and it's incredulous, as we're going to see. What did they tell me? They said the Jews should have stayed in Europe. So I said, well, do you know anything about recent history? Like the last 50 years, 60 years? He goes, why? I said, well, did you ever hear the Holocaust? I said, oh yeah, I forgot about that. You forgot. 6 million Jews, gassed, wiped out. You know why they got killed? Because of who they were. Because of their race. Right? Didn't Hitler Yamach Shemo say, they're subhuman? And they're going to distinguish this race between anybody else. That's what he said. Not making it up. That's what he claimed. Right? But somebody had the audacity, or I'd say better, stupidity, to say, yeah, we should have stayed in Europe. You know how many Jews killed, pogroms, all kinds of things in Europe? All over Europe. All over. Expulsions, inquisitions, pogroms, even before the Holocaust. Oh yeah, I sort of forgot that. It sort of slipped my mind. I forgot about modern history. How do you forget about modern history? How do you forget about modern history? Doesn't make any sense. So someone here asked, someone who's Iraqi, would they should live in Europe? I wouldn't stay in Europe. It was my choice. Europe's got so much Jewish blood. Okay, if you're there, you can't move out, whatever. I think there are other places to go. Probably other places to go. Right? But yeah, anti-Semitism's on the rise. So now why do I bring all this up? Right? So I don't normally, I'm not normally going to quote, sports figures or actors or actresses or whatever, because, in the context of Judaism, it doesn't really matter what they say. They don't know anything. They can't read the alphabet, right? Even Madonna, right, claims to learn Kabbalah, or I should call her Esther. She don't know the alphabet. She don't know the alphabet. I'm really going to take her serious? What you going to say about Judaism? All these people, right? All a bunch of leftists, etc. Most of them. So I wouldn't take anything they say serious. But when they make such a faux pas, when they say something that is so ludicrous, right? If it's so ludicrous, you got to call them out. You got to call them out. So we're going to quote this whole thing. I'm not gonna, go so much into detail, but I just want to point out what the person said. Now they backtracked on it, right? Then we backtracked on it because they got a lot of flack for it, and we'll see why. I want to show you the Torah perspective. How is a Torah Jew supposed to look at what this person said? Now we could say this person's an idiot, they're ludicrous, they don't know anything about history, which is, may all be true. So the statement was, anyone, hasn't heard it because it's been all over the news, right? That is by Whoopie Goldberg, right? Makes a statement, Holocaust isn't about race. It's about man's inhumanity to man. Now that goes against exactly what Hitler said. So he doesn't know that much about history. Maybe. How can it not be about race? That's exactly what he said. So she was on this panel discussion about, what was the whole discussion about? Removal of a Holocaust book as part of a curriculum in Tennessee. Right? I don't know, I guess it was a very graphic book or whatever. So there was a whole question, should it be taught? Should this be taught in the classroom? Which, whatever, maybe we'll have a discussion about that. Whether it's a good thing people understand, what it is. There's still Holocaust deniers that live, that exist. It's really hard to imagine because they got all this evidence, right? So she differed from why the Holocaust, should be taught to students, right? They just teach about pogroms, why that's bad. Doesn't matter who it's against. If they're part of the curriculum teaching about a million, the million Hutus or Tutsis killed in Rwanda. I don't think it's probably part of the curriculum. Maybe it is. I'm not up to date on what the curriculum is in school, right? But something like this is an unbelievable thing where you have 6 million people killed only because of their religion, right? Only because of their race. Now, Hitler, Yamach Shemoy, well, he made that clear. He made that absolutely clear. She didn't know that, so she's lacking information in history. Okay. So then the co-host comes out and says, but didn't the Nazis, at least he knew something, didn't the Nazis consider Jews a different race? Of course. Of course. He knew something over here. Very good. Right? And then said, it's about white supremacy. It's about going after Jews, gypsies. But no, she wouldn't give up. She said, the minute you turn it into race, you go down this alley. But that's, it sounds so ludicrous, right? Because if you know anything about Jewish history, that's exactly what Hitler said. It is about race. Of course, he wanted to uproot a race. That's what he wanted to do. At the expense of his own war machine. They were losing, right? They were losing. They needed more, more engines, more, more trains, to bring weapons to the front. And he didn't care. All he wanted to do was kill more Jews. That's all he wanted to do. Wasn't interested in anything else. At the expense of his own people. At the expense of the war. That was his goal. His goal, you read his book, Mein Kampf. I don't recommend it, but if you read it, his goal is absolutely clear. 100% clear. We are going to uproot these people. We are going to not only uproot, we're going to kill them, we're going to annihilate them. As a people. How do you say that's not a race issue? Right? So comes out Yad Vashem, which is the Holocaust Memorial here in Israel. And they say we can't mince any words. People have to know what led to the Holocaust, to annihilate an entire nation, their religion, culture, values, by all these collaborators with the Nazis, right? That they considered us, for whatever reason, an extremely dangerous racial enemy. It's all about race. How in the world do you say it's not about race? Right? So now she backtracks. Now what did she say? She said the Holocaust is not about race, but man's inhumanity to man. What should she have said? Right? We'll take her at face value. That it was about the Nazi systematic annihilation of the Jewish people, who they deemed to be an inferior race. That I should have mentioned also. Yeah. That you should have mentioned. Because that's the essence of what it's about. Is the outright destruction of a nation. Oh, that slipped your mind. Slipped your mind when people, thousands, thousands of people ripped her to shreds, totally ripped her to shreds, which she deserved. I don't think there's any question. Okay. So she backtracked. And she said, they've always had my support. That'll never waver. I'm sorry for the hurt I've caused. Now, let's analyze this for a second. I mentioned before in a number of my classes on Pirkei Avos and ethics of our fathers. I mentioned a number of times when a person says something, and let's say they claim it's a slip of the tongue. Right? There was a story of a basketball player who was playing a game, live stream, and he was caught on camera making an anti-Semitic epithet, saying something anti-Jewish. Then, he backtracks, so to speak, and whatever, they find him, he didn't play another game, during the year, even though he was injured anyway, whatever the case is. And people who make statements like this, their claim, some of them will say, some of them say, oh, I should have said that. That was a slip of the tongue. Now let's understand, according to Judaism, what that is. In other words, if a person thinks something, doesn't matter if it's true or it's not true. A person thinks something. When they think something, it's part of their psyche, right? It becomes part of their psyche. Now, that means that part of their psyche, if it's there, it can come out. It can come out of their mouth. Meaning that they may not be thinking, they may be upset, they may be, 10 other things. But what can happen is, if they're not really thinking, they'll say something. And you're going to say, oh, I can't believe I said that. What do you mean you can't believe you said it? How do you not believe you said it? You thought it. Once a person thinks something or they see something, the soul captures it. There's like a screenshot taken and it goes into your psyche. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to act on it. It doesn't mean you're necessarily going to say anything about it, but it's there. Right? Anything we see, everything, it's recorded. A person, could think of something that they haven't thought of in 40 years, 20 years, whatever. How do they bring it up? Because it's there. It just, you need something to trigger it, but it's part of your soul. It's part of your psyche. Okay. So if it's there, then that means it can come up at any time. It can come up at a time where I'm not thinking. Right? It can come up at a time where a person's under stress. They're under pressure. Right? So something happens, let's say, I don't know, they're building something and they take a hammer and smash their hand with it by accident. And then they say all kinds of things. They curse and this and that. But they don't just say curse words. Right? Maybe they'll make, they'll make some religious epithet. Right? Say, oh, stupid Jews, they bang their hand. What does one thing have to do with another? Because it person banged their hand, they can curse Jews. Right? Why'd they do that? A, they believe it. It's there. It's part of their psyche. Right? It's not, it's very hard. Once it's part of your psyche, get rid of it. Very, very hard. It's there. Right? I tell certain people, big into, TV in the 70s or 80s or whatever. Now I mention a few bars of a certain commercial, they can tell me straight away what it is. It's there. It exists. Right? 100% it exists. It's just a question if it'll come up or not. So if someone makes a statement and they say, oh, I never should have said that. I'm not that type of person. I'm not a racist. Might not be. Right? Maybe the person never said anything before. Or maybe said it in other company where they didn't care if the person said it or not. But the fact is, person makes a statement. When a person makes a statement, unless they can fake it very well, they make a statement. That's what they think. Now, some people don't care, and they'll say whatever they want, and they don't care about the repercussions. In this case, kind of hard not to. But, person makes a statement, that statement comes up, it says something about them. It says something about what they think. Does that mean 100% they're racist? No, doesn't necessarily mean that, right? But a person can never say, this is the point here, and that is a person can never ever say, oh, that was a slip of the tongue. It might have been, right? I'll give a little bit of credit here. Maybe it was a slip of the tongue, but it doesn't mean the person doesn't think it. Because if a person never thought it, he never say it in any context. Because he never thought it. It never became part of his psyche. But now that it becomes part of their psyche, that's a different issue. That's a different issue. This is not the first time she said, she said things like this. Right? So, I'm not going to say it's like the most shocking thing. Oh, I can't believe she said it. Right? Other things. She said, but, this is why that, a person, first of all, you gotta be careful what you say. Definitely true. But also before you make a statement, you should check the facts. If you're going to say something like that, and she's all about race and other things, so if you're going to say a statement like that, you better darn well know and have your facts together. Something like this is not just a slip of the tongue. She got called out on it. She backtracked. So, oh, you're right. I meant to say this. But if nobody would have called her on it, would she have backtracked? Never. Because she believes it's true. Now, I would ask the question, how can you believe it's true? What happened in recent history? Right? What happened in recent history? What do you do between the years of, 1935 and 1945? 10 years. Right? Talking about 75 years ago. So in those 10 years, all these atrocities, and you still have witnesses to these atrocities. So what do you do about not knowing or just sort of looking the other way about this fact about history? If you read Mein Kampf, Hitler said exactly what he set out to do. Maybe he thought he was crazy. Maybe he thought he was a madman. But he said exactly what he was going to do. And this is exactly what he said. So either person makes such a stupid statement, they don't know anything about history. Could very well be. Maybe know other things about history. This certainly she doesn't know about. How could she not know that? Because that's my whole point. Anti-Semitism is not rational. Totally not rational. They can take things out of context. I mean, you got these Holocaust deniers, boggles the mind. You got so much overwhelming evidence, documented. And to still say it didn't happen, it was made up. I can understand more. You tell me stories in the Torah. You tell me, things of Jewish law, oral law and how it works, and it's all make-believe and fantasy and this, and people say what they want, they do what they want. Maybe I could hear that. I mean, I would disagree, right? But that would make more sense if you have to produce evidence. And you have to explain to them what it means, what it represents, right? That I hear, that can get convoluted. But here you have evidence black on white. Black on white. You have absolute evidence over here. Nothing to talk about. How can they deny it? Because they don't want to see what the reality is. They don't want to see it. You really think she didn't know, she didn't remember that it was a whole racial thing? She didn't, that slipped my mind. Really? That slipped your mind. What I meant to say was, now you backtrack. Because everyone and their mother came out against you. Makes sense. This is what I meant to say. Well, you're missing facts in history, obvious facts. This is not something that's, you need a rabbi to tell you. You look at any history book, it talks about the Holocaust, and it's pretty clear. I mean, unless it's doctored, unless they change the facts, right? But even by secular historians, they're all going to say the same thing. They're all going to say the exact same thing. And nothing to talk about. They're going to make the same claim. It was a systematic annihilation of a people against their race. Period. That is it. And nothing else to say. Right? That you can't make a mistake. Oh, we're not going to go down there. We're not going to go down that race. The minute you turn it into race, what are you kidding? You got to be kidding over here. Right? It's not about race. I agree it's about man's inhumanity. Man, I would agree with that statement. That's definitely true. And that's what you see in the 20th century. The single greatest bloodshed in the history of man, of man's inhumanity, man. Got World War I, World War II, all kinds of other things going on. No question that I would agree. But you can't deny the fact. I mean, you could, but you really can't deny the fact that the Holocaust is all about race. It's all about race. Right? So now she doesn't want to go down that path. Right? How can you do that? There are two white groups of people. So what? And if the Jews were green and the Jews were Chinese, it's not about a systematic annihilation of a people. Will that change anything? It's two white people. So what? And if it's white and black, you say the same thing. Oh, no. That's racist. That's racist. Have other people in the world ever been tried to be eradicated like this based on race? You might think maybe there are other groups. People can prove me wrong. How do you, I understand where it's coming from. I understand what our mentality is. Right? It's not about white and white over here. It just so happens they both happen to be white. Jews happen to be white, Germans were white. Fine. What in the world does that have to do with the fact that they systematically want to annihilate a people based on their race? What difference does it make? They're white, they're black, they're Chinese, they're Asian, they're purple. What's the difference? You got to say, well, what if they did that to, gay lesbians? They're also white, a lot of them. Maybe some of them are black also. Well, let's say they're all white. You got to say it's white against white. No, systematic annihilation of people that hold according to whatever they hold by. It's not a race. It's a different issue. But if you would systematically want to annihilate them, no difference. No difference in many ways. It's such an idiotic statement, showing absolute lack of knowledge, sympathy, which, I wouldn't necessarily go to her for sympathy for what's going on to the Jewish people, right? She wouldn't be the first person I would go to, right? Or the second, or the third, or the fifth, or the 20th, or the 500,000. I'm not going to get empathy over here, no matter what she says, right? The point is, as we mentioned, anti-Semitism is not rational. It's not a rational thing. It's not something that makes sense. Because if Jews have money, and they say, oh, look, Jews have money, let's hate them because they have money, and we don't. Well, what about Jews in another place that are poor? We hate the Jews anyway because they're poor. They're bloodsuckers over here. They're on welfare. They're this. Right? So we hate them for that. They have power. They don't have power. They hate Jews in either case. That means it's irrational. Totally irrational. Right? Someone said, well, isn't it true? If we're not doing what we're supposed to do, that's why there's anti-Semitism. That's right. Keep us in check. That I would agree. Right? Even if a lot of people out there became Noahites, right? Non-Jews don't want to convert to Judaism or can't convert to Judaism. They have a portion of the world to come if they keep the Noahide laws. Very good. So if there were more Noahides out there, wouldn't that eradicate anti-Semitism? No. Maybe it'll bring it down, right? Instead of being so high, maybe it'll be much lower. True. That's probably true. Will it eradicate it forever? No. Why not? Because this is what's supposed to be before the Messiah comes. I mean, you take the state of Israel, which without getting into politics or anything else, right? You take the state of Israel. You take the state of Israel, and they've been condemned. They've been condemned in the UN more than any other nation combined. So, the single biggest lie next to Christianity, the fact that there's the so-called Palestinian people. Never existed, right? We invented that, unfortunately. So you take Mark Twain, Samuel Langhorne Clemens, as he was known, late 1800s came to Israel. And he said exactly what the prophets say. Totally demolished the whole country. Totally demolished. If there were so many Palestinians and we stole the land from them and whatever, and they were this whole nation, where were they? Oh, they must have been hiding. Maybe they all lived in caves. Maybe. Where were they? And when the Turks were in charge of the Ottoman Empire, where were they? Were they by the British? Gee, I don't know. You know why you don't know? Because they weren't there. They didn't exist. They were part of Transjordan, part of Lebanon. Yeah, the Lebanese, Transjordans, the Egyptians, all these other people. And now we're going to give them the status like they were their own nation? Never happened. But everyone's drinking the Kool-Aid. Everyone's drinking the Kool-Aid. Saying we did this and we did that. We created this entity. True. That I agree. We ourselves, Israelis, did it. They created it. Did they exist before? No. What about 100 years ago? No. 500 years ago? No. They never existed. Ever. As we would say in Boston. They never existed. But everybody in academia, everybody in the world will say, we stole the land. We bought it legally. They never had an entity, never had anything. Zero. So why does everyone believe that? Why does the whole world believe that? 22 Arab countries. They need one strip of land, no bigger than the size of New Jersey. Why? Because it's a lie. No other way to say it. It's a total lie. But that lie has been perpetuated for a very long time. So what does it show? It shows people don't know anything about history. Or they ignore history. Let's say better. They ignore history. Because history, isn't it his story? Right? It's his story. So they can perpetuate however they want. Make it look like this, make it look like that, make it look like something else. But it may not be true. You look at the facts. Why don't people look at the facts? I can speak about that for the next 3 hours. Because people have, people have an agenda. They have an absolute agenda. They have an agenda. What, Whoopi Goldberg doesn't have an agenda? Oh, she got an agenda. She's got a left-wing agenda. No question about it. You make a statement like this, it's about 2 white groups of people? Come on. Has there ever been a systematic annihilation of a nation more than this? Based on race? Never. Never. No offense to the blacks. Never happened. They've had their own issues. I agree, a lot of racism against them. Compared to the Jewish people, they're whistling Dixie. Now, I probably shouldn't say that, but there's no comparison to what we've been through and what they've been through. No comparison. We've lost a lot more people, a heck of a lot more. I'm not saying they've had it easy. No, I'm not saying that at all. Not saying there's not racism against it. Still exists. Still definitely exists. But to make such a statement, and I forgot about history. I didn't remember about history. I do not remember. Oh, you know what it is? It's called you have an agenda. When you have an agenda, you can smear the facts. And I tell people all the time, you can think I'm a fanatic. You can say whatever you want. Answer certain questions. Show me you can back up what you say based on Torah sources, right? Don't just say, I don't believe it. I don't care what you believe in or not. Is it true? Is it not true? Did God speak on Mount Sinai or he didn't speak on Mount Sinai? Don't distort the facts. That's what people do. Why do they distort the facts? Because they have an agenda. They have an agenda. And she got hammered for this. She should have got hammered. But I just want to point out that someone says something like that. You're right. You're going to think, they didn't look at the facts. And they don't know the facts so well. You're right. You don't think they know. You don't think she knows? Of course she knows. Just wants to ignore that and compare what goes on in the land of Israel to apartheid. That there's no comparison either. Totally no comparison. So people like to say all kinds of things, not based on anything, based on what they think, based on their agenda. They don't know about history. They don't care about history. And they want to say whatever they want to say. See, but this is a little more, as the English would say, it's a little more dicey. Right? A little more dicey over here. Why? Because you're talking about something that's still very sensitive. Right? The Holocaust is still a very sensitive topic. Still a very sensitive topic. So whoever's going to speak about the Holocaust in a public forum, gotta be careful what you say. Even if what you believe is true, let's say, should it be said? Right? You have to have a little bit of sensitivity. Right? And a person will get hammered, they won't hear anything else. A person makes certain statements, it's kind of like you're putting it down. Even if the statement is true. Even if the statement is true. Even if, let's say, in Germany, at the time of the Holocaust, 80% intermarriage. Very, very high percentage of intermarriage. Right? Is that the cause of the Holocaust? Maybe. You're going to tell a Holocaust survivor that who lost their whole family? I'm not going to say that. Is it a possibility? Could be. Could be a million different reasons. We don't know why. Right? But, if those statistics are true, it's got to make you think, what was going on. But you got to be sensitive. You got to be ultra sensitive. Speaking about that topic. And again, even if it's true, in a lot of different aspects of it, may very well be true. In a public forum, you got to be very, very careful. Very, very, very careful. But to say, that, it's not about race, where in the world are you coming from? What planet did you just get dropped off from? That's ludicrous. Right? So they're not denying the Holocaust happened. But what are they saying? They're downplaying it. Oh, it's not about race. Because she's all about race. This isn't about race. You know why? Because it's about two white people. Two groups of white people. You got the Germans. You got the Germans. You got the Slovakians. You got the Czechs. You got the Russians. You got the Hungarians. You got all these people who wanted to help annihilate the Jews. They just all happen to be white. Boy, what a coincidence. They all happen to be white. What does that have to do with anything? Does that deny the fact they were singled out to be annihilated just because both were white? What's the difference? Doesn't make any difference at all. It's a ludicrous statement. They're not denying the Holocaust happened, at least that. They're not denying that. But they no, it's not about race. Well, what is it about? Two different groups of white people hate each other? What's it about? Jews didn't hate non-Jews. Just the opposite. They wanted to be more like non-Jews. Right? They want to be left alone. They wanted to intermarry. They wanted to do whatever. Fine. But they were singled out. They were singled out based on their race. Doesn't matter if they're white or not. It's irrelevant. Totally irrelevant. How do you take that out of the equation? You can't take that out of the equation. So what that means is she's an anti-Semite. That's what it means. I don't care what she says. Right? You make a statement like that, I would agree with the second statement. It's about man's inhumanity to man. That's true. That's part of it. But you're missing the essence of what it is. Totally missing the essence. Oh, I really like the Jewish people. I got Jewish friends. Well, that's beautiful. But how do you look? How do you look in the camera with a straight face and say, not about race? It's not about race. It's only about man's inhumanity to man. So either she's the biggest idiot in the world, could be, or she doesn't know anything about history, also could be, or she denies that point. See, anti-Semitism does not have to be rational. This is a total ludicrous anti-Semitic thing to say. Totally. I don't think there's anything to talk about. However, she's going to spin it. She said that statement. Nope, it's not about race. Well, it's only about man's inhumanity to man. It's only about white against whites. No. Come on. You have an agenda. I get what your agenda is. And she definitely should have been hammered. I don't think there's any question. She backtracked real fast. Real fast. She don't want that kind of backlash. Even if she agrees with it, she ain't standing up to it. She got too many followers, too many things. You know, her co-host tried to get her out of it. And she just kept digging and digging and digging. What does that mean? That's what she thinks. I understand she backtracked. Probably she felt she had no choice. But isn't this what she really thinks? Is that rational? No, it's not. It's not rational. You can say, well, she needs to be educated. Let her read a whole bunch of books. Let her. Is she going to? I doubt it. You're going to change her mentality? No. You're going to make her more sensitive? Maybe. Maybe that's all it'll do. Maybe that's what it'll do. It'll make her a little more sensitive. You know, be much more careful what she says. Okay, that might be, that might be a good thing. Doesn't change anything, though. You know, this is what she thinks. Part of her psyche. That's what she believes. So if that's what she believes, okay, she's going to say it. So what does she care? She said all kinds of crazy things. So why not? We'll chalk it up to another crazy thing she said. But they're not going to let her get away with it. That's the difference. That's the difference. Imagine if there was, at some point in history, there were 100,000, 500,000 blacks that got murdered. Totally, they got annihilated. Why? Because of their skin color. Would she only say that's man's inhumanity, man? And what if the people that annihilated them were blacks? Right? In the case of the Hutus and the Tutsis. Right? Blacks against blacks. That's man's inhumanity to man. True. Oh, that's not about race. Oh, it's too, if it's two whites, if it's white against white, that's not race. Black against black, also maybe it's not race. Maybe you should disagree. Right? But there's an agenda. This is what I want to point out. There's an agenda. And that agenda is crum. Totally false. Totally false, and she should be called out on it. Because she don't know much about history, or she denies it. Right? Now, the other question would be whether that should be taught in schools. If you don't teach it, they're never going to know about it. Parents are going to teach their kids there was such a thing as a Holocaust, non-Jews. Unless they're Bible thumpers or whatever, why would they teach their kids that? Or they might teach them, yeah, all these Jews got killed and, millions of Jews because they killed our Savior. They killed JC. Okay. Maybe they'll justify it that way. But why would they teach that in general? So in schools, they want to teach about man's inhumanity to man. And how we can't be racist, we can't be prejudiced, all these things. That's a good thing. right? I don't think it's a bad thing. People show tolerance, which doesn't exist in the world, but try and show tolerance. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. So you can do a whole study about the Hutus against the Tutsis. That happened in Rwanda. Man's inhumanity to man. Holocaust is a very good example to teach that. A group of people try to annihilate based on race. Right? So I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Right? So that's the question. Should this be taught? Why, kids have to be taught between right and wrong. They know basic things that are right and wrong, but people make choices. And if it's against the law, they get caught. They can justify whatever they did, doesn't really matter. Right? If it's against the law, it's wrong in general. Right? Forget about how the Torah looks at it. It's a whole different, whatever, it's a whole different issue. But shouldn't people be taught man's inhumanity to man? Sure. In order to teach proper moral ethics. But you run into a problem. Why? Because certainly in the States and other places, separation of church and state. All right, you can't bring in the Bible, you can't bring in Torah laws, that separation. So where do you get morality from? How do we define morality? Morality is defined whatever I think, whatever I do, whatever society is going to say, whether it's right or wrong. The LGBT community, very strong community today. 30, 40 years ago, it's brushed under the carpet, in the closet. Now it's a whole big thing. What happened? What changed? 40 years. Oh, we're more open-minded. We're this, we're that. Can't be homophobic. Different things. So yeah, we hold Torah is forbidden. 100% is forbidden. Right? So, so if that's the case, but can't teach that. Why can't you teach that? Again, separation, morality. We're going to be part. We're going to be neutral like Switzerland. People want to do it. That's great. But obviously these groups have an agenda also. Right? I just want to show that perspective. Somebody asks, are the Turkish people part of Yishmael? Does Yishmael hate Yaakov? Interesting. The Arabs are the offshoot. The Muslims are an offshoot of Yishmael. Are they part of the Jewish people? No. Certainly not part of the Jewish people. Do they hate Yaakov? I mean, you see today, there are a lot of Muslims that do. I'm not saying they all do, but how they view the Quran and how they look at anyone doesn't think like them, right? But they, where does Yishmael come from? It comes from Abraham, right? So Abraham, known as the father of all nations, totally the father of all nations. So the question is, are the Turkish people part of Yishmael? Could be. Right? Could be. The problem is that, you got, all these Muslims and you got the Sunnis and the Shiites and others, and some are more radical, less radical. Instead we have to remember that Sancherib took all the nations and mixed them all up. Totally mixed them all up. So we don't know who's who. We have no idea who's who. Because the Netziv, interesting, the Netziv of Naftali Tzvi Berliner, he was head of the Shiva of Volozhin after Rav Chaim of Volozhin. Rav Chaim of Volozhin, the famous student of the Vilna Gaon, of Rav Elijah Vilna. So he brings down his commentary on Chumash in his commentary, the Emek HaDavar. And he says, the Torah tells me that Yishmael is a wild man. He's going to have his hand in everybody, and everyone's going to have their hand in him. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean? So, very simple. What does the Torah say? The Torah says he has his hands in everybody, in everything. So that means he's got greasy palms in general. That means his nature, the way the Torah tells us, is that he's a thief. He's a born thief. That's what his nature is. Now, can he overcome that? Yeah. He can overcome it. I don't know how easy it's going to be, but it's part of his nature. On the other hand, what does the Torah tell me? It says his hand's the hand of everyone, and everyone has their hand in him. Now, comes along the Netziv, and the Netziv says that Yishmael, what's one of the things that they got from Abraham is unbelievable acts of loving kindness. Chesed, They'll invite you into their homes, eat something, drink something, tremendous hospitality. Anyone who's been in an Arab country, right? Unbelievable hospitality. Right now, he says that so the Netziv was more than 100 years ago. So the Netziv says you'll never see any offspring of Yishmael fight against each other. Now, we see today that's not true. We see that there are Sunnis that fight against Shiites, and Shiites fight against others, and whatever. You get all these different groups fighting. So what do you do with the Netziv? What do you do? The Netziv says they're never going to fight against each other. An offspring of Yishmael will never fight against his brother. Never. So what do you do with that? So one explanation is that even though people say they're Muslim, they go back to Yishmael. Well, nobody knows. Nobody really knows because, way back when, Sancheira messed up everything. Totally messed up everything. So nobody knows who they come from necessarily, right? Of all the non-Jewish nations. Now, they could say, my father was a Muslim and his father, and they go back, go back generations, right? But if that is true, and they could trace it way, way back, then we still have a question. And the question is, how could Muslims, or let's say better, how could offspring of Yishmael, who we know today as the Muslims, how could they fight one against the other? So either you tell me that Netziv is wrong, right? That's not true today, and things have changed. Or we could say, that could be, things could change today. But it could also be that since no one has clear-cut, certainly in the non-Jewish world, no one has clear-cut genealogy. If they don't have clear-cut genealogy, then they can fight against each other. That's not a contradiction. Because they're not truly from him. They don't truly go back to Yishmael. They don't truly go back to Yishmael, then that would make sense. So the question is, are the Turkish people part of Yishmael? They could be. They're attaching themselves, if a lot of them, or the majority, are Muslim, they're attaching themselves to great-great-granddad, who is Yishmael. Right? Certainly part of Yishmael. Right? Could they choose not to be part of that? Sure. Doesn't mean necessarily they aren't. Right? But certainly they could be. Certainly they could be. Again, if Sancheir messed up all the nations, and dispersed them and whatever, so then it's hard to say that. Now, second part of the question is, does Yishmael hate Yaakov? We're infidels according to him. Right? If you read the Quran, anyone doesn't think like them or believe like them, they're infidels. Christianity, no different. You don't believe in JC, you're going to fry in hell forever. Right? Myself included. We don't believe in JC. Okay? Right? So they hate anybody. That doesn't think like them. Anyone doesn't believe like them, they're infidels. Now, according to us, it's a made-up religion. It's a false religion. Right? Totally false religion. Just like Christianity, Hinduism, all these things. So, do they hate Yaakov? There are a lot of fanatics out there in the Muslim world that certainly hate Jews. I don't think there's any question. There is an interesting phenomenon going on where a lot of nations making peace with Israel, right? With the UAE and other places as well. So for them it's about business. They're making a lot of money off us, no question. Allowing us to go there, and people making weddings there, and bar mitzvahs, and visiting, and whatever. But there's another factor involved, another major factor. The other major factor is, if they're friends with us, we can help them, they can help us, fight against Iran. There's a common enemy. So sometimes, even if there's a common enemy, people may be friendly and have partnerships and all that. It's not because they love us. I don't think it's necessarily because they love us and they're so open-minded. In the Ibrahim Accords, I don't think that's necessarily the case. But there's a common enemy. There's a common enemy, right? And that common enemy is what? Is Iran. right? That everyone's afraid of. They don't want, no, people don't want to mess with Iran. They don't want to mess with Hezbollah. They don't want to mess with, their nuclear capabilities, a lot of things. So they have a common enemy. But look, it's strategic. They're making a lot of money. And some of these other countries, whatever, similar thing. I don't think it's any love for the Jewish people. They may smile and this and that behind our backs. Who knows what they say, right? Are they happy that we come and bring the money? Sure. Are they going to come here in droves? I don't know. I don't think they're going to come here in droves and, and spice up the Israeli economy. But there's a common enemy, right? Let's make no mistake. There's a common enemy. So it makes sense for them to be with somebody who's got power. They don't have power. They don't have real power. Standing army, it's a joke. So they have an alliance. They made an alliance. Again, it's a strategic alliance, the monetary alliance, okay. But deep down, what's it based on? Their hatred for Iran. And they want protection and they want help, right? I think that's really what the bottom line is. Based on that. So does Yishmael hate Yaakov? They hate anyone who doesn't think like that. They certainly think the Torah makes, their great-great-great-granddad Yishmael look bad. And the whole story with that. They certainly don't like the Christians, right? No question. But, they believe in the prophecy of Moshe Rabbeinu. They believe in Moshe Rabbeinu, etc. But, the Rambam states clear. Anything that's a made-up religion that goes against the Torah, that denies what God said, and say, well, you're not chosen anymore. There's a new covenant, different things, false religion. Totally false religion. I don't care if they believe Moses is a prophet, right? But if they say we're not chosen and this and that, it's over. It's a new religion, right? Just like Christianity might be worse in different ways. But this, this is pretty bad. This is definitely pretty bad. No question. Somebody asked, what's the view of cannabis in Judaism? So, medical marijuana, depending on what it's for pain, right? So, if it's for pain, for dealing with pain, there are rabbinical authorities that say it's okay. Now, recreational drug use, that's forbidden. Torah says you got to guard yourself. You have to guard your body. Cause a lot of problems. People will say alcohol is worse. How many people who were high kill people in car accidents? Probably not so many. Majority car accidents, someone under the influence. Some are, harder drugs, maybe. Most of it's alcohol. That's probably the number one. They can say they should ban alcohol. Okay, we have to know how to use alcohol. Right? So someone told me, well, just because it's been banned and now, and now it's considered okay in many places. So we should say it's okay. When people use it, there is a problem in the Jewish community. I'm not going to say not. Right? There is an issue. People using it recreationally. So I have a video on Tanakh Talk. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, about, I think we call it sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Right? I think that's what we called it. So whatever, spoke about it. Again, it causes a lot of problems. Alcohol abuse might be worse in different ways. But anyone who's a habitual user, of marijuana, there are a lot of issues with it. Cause a lot of problems. So, recreational drug use in general, forbidden. Anything that's going to cause harm to the body is forbidden. You say, what about eating, a nice few pieces of cake? I'm not going to say it's forbidden, it's not healthy. You have an obligation to guard the body. This is something we know. Goes against, the health of the body. It's what it does. So, someone pointed out, well, just because it's, in the States makes it illegal, and then it makes a lot of places makes it legal. We don't go by what they say. You're right. Now that it's legal, so what? It doesn't matter if it's legal or not. Question is, should a person use it? Is it good for them to use? No. A lot of statistics against it. I'm not going to bring them up, but there's a lot of statistics against it. And it shouldn't be used, even in recreational use. If it's for medical purposes, right? Take away pain is a different issue. That's definitely a different issue. It depends what type of chronic pain and whatever. But for certain things, 100% would be okay to take, right? Because you're taking it against pain. You're not taking it just for recreational use. Someone points out the Russians were Esav. Yeah, Russians definitely. The Western world. The Western world are known as Esav. That we know. That we know. Somebody asked, interesting. Somebody asked if they're a Noahide and let's say the parents are Muslim, the siblings are Muslim, right? Does that make any difference? No. Genetics don't make any difference. We don't really hold by genetics anyway for many things. Somebody will say, well, I took a DNA test and I'm 10% Jewish. Well, that doesn't mean anything. In order to convert, you got to go through the process. DNA testing is irrelevant. Now, it could be, we are a product of who our parents are. So we have certain character traits that may come from them, and certain biases and different things. That's true. But that, does that mean I can't be a proper Orthodox Jew or a Noahide just because parents were messed up, in different ways? And they gave me bad character traits? If I don't act on them, if I don't act on these bad things that were given to me as part of my DNA, then I don't get the curse, right? The curse that the kids will suffer for what the parents did, right? Because in that sense, we don't get the curse if we go in the right direction. If we go in the wrong direction, that curse may apply. Well, it's a whole nother discussion. We don't necessarily get into now, right? Genetics over here doesn't matter, right? That doesn't matter. Parents were Muslim, Christian, whatever, irrelevant. Person wants to be a Noahide or convert. Is that going to hinder? No. You might have certain biases. Okay. You might have been brought up, indoctrinated in a certain way. Okay. Who says I have to act on it? Who says that that I wouldn't be allowed to convert because of it? If a person throws it out and they want to work on being a Noahide, being a Jew, or a JIT as I would call it, okay. So you get rid of all the other garbage. Right? We still may have baggage, fine. Doesn't mean you can't, a person can't thrive, being an Orthodox Jew or a JIT or a Noahide based on it. Somebody asks, there's an idea that we're supposed to beautify mitzvahs. True, that means that a person buys an esrog, they should buy a nice esrog. Should buy a beautiful esrog. Right? When does it go too far? Okay, so let's say an esrog. Take an esrog. Person can buy a beautiful esrog. It's got no spots on it, no blemishes, and it's going to cost, let's say, $400. Let's say it'll cost $400 for an esrog. Now, does the person, if they don't have that much money, should they be spending $400 on an esrog? No. You can probably get a beautiful esrog for $100, a couple $100. Is it going to be as beautiful as a $400? No, it might not be. Right, but you don't have to go that far. But any mitzvah we do, we should beautify. Right, a person should have a nice talus. Right, they're going to wear. If a guy is going to wear a talus, right, it shouldn't be it shouldn't be a schlumpy looking thing. It should be a nice thing. Does it have to cost you $200? No, within reason. Right, spending money on clothes or Shabbos clothes. You should have nice clothes, different clothes that you wear on Shabbos than you do during the week. Right, that's for sure. What a person can afford. That mean that a person should be buying an Armani suit and wear it on Shabbos. I wouldn't go that far. Person has the money, maybe. But I would tell people that even if you have the money, you buy a normal suit, couple $100 suit, whatever it is. So you don't want to stand out. You don't want people to give you an eye in her, give you the heebie-jeebies, as I would say. Give you the evil eye. That you don't want. Because then you're in trouble. Then you make people jealous, and that's never good. Well, it's a whole nother topic also. I don't necessarily want to get into now. But spending thousands or spending millions. Again, depends what a person can afford. If a person buys tefillin, let's say, phylacteries, whatever you want to call them, you should buy a nice pair that are going to last. Right? They could cost you $400 or $500. You can buy a cheaper pair, but again, if you're going to use them on a regular basis, you buy a nice pair. Could you buy a pair for $1,000? Yeah. Could you buy it for $2,000? Yeah. Could I buy, an equally good pair, let's say for $500, and it has, has all the stringencies, whatever? Yeah. So it has to be within reason. Person, you don't have an obligation to put yourself in the poorhouse over here, but you should have nice things. A person, let's say, gets a Kiddush cup. You can get a Kiddush cup for $100. You get it for $40. You get it for $200. You have to spend within reason. A person wants to beautify it, and they say, okay, I'm going to go all out. I'm going to spend $400, let's say on a Kiddush cup, and they're going to scrimp in other ways. If they wanted to, they could do that. They could do that. But again, it has to be within reason. Within reason what a person can afford. You say, well, I can't afford much. Okay. So, person can save up, or if a person needs something, let's say like a Kiddush cup. So, you can get a very nice Kiddush cup for cheap. Person wants to upgrade, they get more money. Okay. Certain things obviously you need, right? They don't really have that much of a choice. Kiddush cup you're going to need. You should have a nice Kiddush cup. A menorah should have a nice menorah. Again, do you have to break the bank to do it? No. Certainly don't have to do that. I mean, is it good to have a nice menorah? Yeah, it is. But, you can get something that's, that's solid silver, could cost you $2,000. You get one that's silver plated, it costs you $100. It also looks nice. Within reason. It's gotta be within reason. Even though there is a mitzvah to beautify the mitzvah, okay, there's a certain level you don't go beyond. Right? That you got to be careful of. Right? But, in general, it is important, as you mentioned, it is important to have nice things. I don't think there's any question. But you do what you can afford. It should be nice. It doesn't have to be super nice, but it should be nice. Yeah. Any other questions? So I always say in these Q&As, you never know what you're going to get. Just a lot of screaming, probably. All right. No question. I'm going to stop here. I do this every Tuesday and Thursday, 10 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Israel time. Anyone has any questions, find me on Facebook at Michael Chaim Kaufman or Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism. Send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RBBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com. Wish everyone a good beginning of the day, middle